Okay, I think we had the welcome screen up long enough. I want to welcome everybody to the Broadband Hui, and you know, um, I'm hoping that you folks all enjoyed the break that we had in early February. So let's see, as people start trickling in, why don't I go ahead and kind of get started? Uh, I wanted to, let's see, I think this is a pretty close crowd, close, intimate crowd. So I don't know if we have to do any kind of uh, introductions. And the people that are presenting are, you know, are regular. So I think that's a good thing. Okay, so what I want to do is, let's see, I'll share my manao of the day. And Amber, I'm just gonna, just prepare you so that you can say something about net inclusion, but I'll go ahead and start. Um, so for the manao of the day, I wanted to shift gears a little bit and just focus on the three words that Angela Schiefer at Net NDIA shared at her kind of like keynote, and it was resist, dream, and do. And I can summarize her speech by saying that in 2025, she would have never expected to be basically, suing the federal government, but that's what she's doing. And to Dan's point earlier, it's all about what's happening with the DE Digital Equity Act funds, especially things like the competitive grant, as well as other DE slated funds. So her message during net inclusion was really to kind of resist this situation that we're facing, dream, and then I guess dream and keep the dream alive, basically, and then just keep doing what you're currently doing. So I thought that was an appropriate message, and I wanted to share that with you all, regarding net inclusion. And what I wanted to do is maybe share a little bit about what I did at the net inclusion, and I'll and if Amber, you want to share anything that you took away from net inclusion, I'll let you chime in as well. So basically, net inclusion was a convening of digital equity practitioners across the country, and it's been a really rallying cry for digital equity. And over the course of the years that we've been involved, it's been a growing thing, right? And this year was pretty good. It was about 700 folks that showed up. But what was definitely kind of the underlying kind of air of the atmosphere, and it was kind of hinted at 2025 when they did the net inclusion over at Gila River. We didn't get to go to that because it turns out that NTIA had already told us that that was not going to be reimbursed. And then this year, there's still a concern in terms of a lot of the funding. So a lot of the practitioners, the DE practitioners that are in the audience, part of the 700, a lot of them are nonprofits. A lot of them are doing the work anyway. And I think just like how we've kind of encountered, you almost have to figure out how to figure out ways of getting funding on your own. So that's kind of the air of the conference. But it was overall very optimistic, very kind of momentum building, and it's also a great event to see people that we've kind of seen over the course of the years. I participated in two panels. The first one was about communities and indigenous connectivity, and how indigenous connectivity, in my case, how it also plays into the rural communities. So not just indigenous, but rural communities as well. So that was a good panel. The other panelists were primarily from Indian nations. The other panel that I was on was the panel on broadband offices and what they're doing, as a result of the Digital Equity Act being terminated. And it was really kind of a focus on what are people doing in spite of not having any funds to, go out there and help fund projects. So what I did was I kind of focused on the things that we are continuing to do to keep the community together, and spent some time talking about the Broadband Hui. And I'll tell you, the Broadband Hui is quite well known amongst this audience, and I think it'll bear out in a couple places. One is there's a book coming out by Colin Ryan-Smith, and it's called Digital Equity Ecosystems. And he actually writes about the Broadband Hui in his book, as well as the digital equity ecosystem that we developed. So it is, getting a lot of attention, and the fact that we've been persevering over the years, is testament to that. I was started off the panel because it happened. Let's see, it happened exactly at 1 o'clock, and 1 o'clock in Chicago. No, I take that back. I think it was at 1 o'clock in Chicago, and it turns out that it was the exact same time as the Broadband Hui would have been on the 4th of February. So I sort of jokingly told everybody that, everybody in Hawaii is waiting for the Broadband Hui to launch, and I'm not there to launch it, so because I'm here on the panel. And I remember getting several texts saying, when are you gonna start the Hui call? And I had to text him back and say, the Hui call is taking a hiatus today, and we're going to be back on the 18th. Anyway, so everybody in the audience knows that that was the same time as the Broadband Hui. Another thing I kind of brought up was the fact that, we have continued to do things like the Broadband Hui, and that's another, event that brings people together. And thanks to the City and County of Honolulu, that was I think was a great success. And as a result of the Hui, the Ho'ike, we did the Innovation Awards. So that's another thing that we want to kind of keep recognizing what's happening in the community. And the thing I wanted to emphasize, with the audience was that, it's not about the broadband office doing all this stuff. It's working with partners across the community, from counties as well as nonprofits, to help, continue the work that's already being done. And if it's something that we can do to help kind of elevate and boost and bring attention to it, that's what we can do. So those are some of the examples. The other example I brought up was, and you folks will hear more about it later on, but we're partnering with the folks over at AI Safety Awareness, and then we're also teaming up with Nam Vu, who does Impact Hub, and also does the management of the Entrepreneur Sandbox. So we actually have a week slated in April, where we're going to be doing a whole week of AI safety, and many of you are on the planning team. So that's unfolding, and that's another kind of example of what it is that we try to do to help continue bringing the resources and addressing the needs in the community, and doing it without a whole lot of money. So that was kind of my message. and I think it was pretty well received. And then other sessions that were I'll just bring to your attention was of interest was they had a lot of AI sessions, and one session I thought was really interesting was a discussion about AI and policy, and this attorney talked about a civil rights bill that is tied to AI technologies, which I think, if I'm not mistaken, was introduced in Congress, but probably won't, really see the light of day because of the executive order expressing, the federal government's position on AI legislation. So, but she wanted to bring attention to the fact that there's definitely interest in looking at some of the pitfalls that if there are no guardrails, then you might have to deal with this. So there's a lot of discussion going on. In fact, I think the AI safety guys might talk a little bit about some of the prevailing sort of policies that are taking place across the country. What else? There's a couple other sessions that there was a really good, and I think we did this with the whole EK, but during the net inclusion, they also had site visits, and that was really great to go see some of these locations that have done a really good job of building not only a facility and programs, but also are really influencing and impacting their community. And the one that it kind of stands out was a place called the Touch Gift Foundation. And, think of it this way. They pull together community resources in the form of funding to build a really beautiful facility that is geared to helping the marginalized communities, not only learn about, digital literacy, digital skills, access to devices, but they provide all kinds of activities that help to continue to foster people's involvement as well as pathways, into the digital economy. And I kind of look at it like what has happened, like out at Pu'u Honua Waianae, where the community came together and helped fund, the acquisition of land, the building of infrastructure, and enabling people to move from the Waianae Boat Harbor up to Waianae Mauka. This is not a homeless community, but they basically went out and rallied the community, business supporters, got donations, and actually built this quite impressive facility that is there to service that community and that specific sort of underrepresented community. So I thought it was a really great example of perseverance and being resourceful. Anyway, that's kind of some updates on net inclusion, and I think it's a really good conference to go to if you guys are interested. The 2026 version or event is going to take place in Columbus, right? Amber is Columbus. So Amber, you wanna share any insights that you had at net inclusion?
Well, I think you covered it pretty good, Bert. But yeah, I was just going to encourage folks to stay involved. And in case you didn't catch the who's organizing it, it's the NDIA, the National Digital Inclusion Association, and you'll see that they have a lot of resources online. They send out, they have a listserv that's very active, and they send out a lot of really great resources. So I would definitely encourage folks to tune in with them. And one of their big focuses, which I'll just share, is really about digital navigators. I think that I would guess about half the attendees there are practitioners. So it's a very practitioner focused event. So a lot of people are working directly in community. They're going to the event to meet other educators and other practitioners. So really great place for general digital inclusion information. Anyone wants to learn about advocacy or policy activities happening in other states. And certainly for anyone who's interested in digital navigator education, training, certification, or networking, it's, I would say, definitely the go-to place for it. And we'll just keep talking about it for next year, and maybe some more folks can come. And I think that everyone would get a lot out of it. It was a jam-packed event. I mean, I was surprised. We had about 9 simultaneous sessions happening at a time. So certainly a lot of things there to share with the team if a team wanted to go. It was great.
Yeah,
It
no,
was, and the
thanks,
weather
thanks,
was
Amber.
okay. So yeah, it was great. Mhm.
Well, it was okay for Amber, but not for me. it was it was like the frozen tundra. Uh, it's just everything was basically covered in either ice or snow. I vowed not to leave the hotel. I did actually venture out because somebody told me you got to go try a Chicago hot dog. So one of my missions was to go look for a Chicago hot dog. And I'll just share this that, I was kind of, Amber was telling me, oh yeah, yeah, I walked all over the place. I went to, Trader Joe's and everything. I said, oh no way, I'm not gonna go walk like a mile at Trader Joe's, but I will go look for my Chicago hot dog. And then so as I was about to go to this place, I walked out in the doorman. I said, hey, so can you point me to this location for this restaurant? He said, oh, you know what? Those guys are closed because they usually have their, their things outdoors. So, they close during the winter. I said, well, I'm looking for this place any place that could have, me get a taste of a Chicago hot dog. And I see Nick coming on because Nick was the one that put me up to this. And he said, oh, well, you should just go down those stairs over there. And if you go down those stairs just to your left, there's a little bar tavern and they serve food. And one of them is, Chicago hot dog. So you got to go and check that out. I said, oh, sounds good, man. I don't even have to walk 100 yards. So anyway, that's my Chicago hot dog experience. And it was worth it. And they put all kinds of like chilies on it and it was hot. And so I don't know, Nick, you wanna you wanna share, what the draw of a Chicago hot dog is for you?
Thanks, Bert. I think it's just having a good hot dog wherever you're at and seeing what the local flair is. But the spiciness on there is good. It's no red hot dog with mayonnaise, but it's pretty solid.
It's pretty solid. No, I'll tell you that they had peppers and onions and things I didn't even know what they were. And here's the thing, and Amber does a lot better at protecting her skin than I do. And I forgot to bring my chapstick. So, my lips were all like kind of getting chapped. And my first bite into the hot dog wasn't hot in my mouth. It was like burning on my lips because it was so spicy. And you can imagine your lips are all kind of like chapped. And then it's, you're eating this thing that's hot and anyway, maybe that's too much information, but that was my Chicago hot dog experience.
Hey, Bert, I did just
So
want to just jump in a little bit more and
yeah,
just share a
sure.
little bit about some of the policy stuff that we were discussing at the event and how that was kind of structured at Net Inclusion. So we had the, 700 attendees from across the country, and every morning we had a one large shared session with some pretty high profile people attending. We had the mayor of Chicago there one day talking about
Hmm.
digital inclusion in Chicago, and we had one of the FCC commissioners, Anna Gomez, as well speaking.
Hmm.
One of the things, so obviously the buzz around the whole country is, Digital Equity Act funds and BEAD non-deployment funds. Those are the big. Everyone's talking about those all the time as kind of funding mechanisms and the subjects that were really kind of on folks' minds right now. There's a big push around AI and education, children's use of AI in education. That was definitely a theme, and AI, everything was a theme. as well as kind of back to the ground level stuff, the digital navigators and some of the work that they're doing. What happened right after the conference, which is very interesting, is that NTIA, the government entity that funds all of the digital work that we work in, had planned a couple of sessions, which were highly anticipated by the conference attendees. They were invite only. There was another day where organizations, not just government agencies, were invited, but they have set up, I believe now this week is the third session, listening sessions that NTIA is hosting, asking for feedback on how non-deployment funds from the BEAD programs should be used or could be used in communities there. So they're soliciting feedback across the country. We had several, kind of working sessions around this, what to talk about. It's a very limited amount of words that you get to either send in your written statement, and I believe it was a 2-minute time to do a verbal presentation. So many ideas out there. Mostly, I think that from the DIA perspective, people are just really hoping that those funds get brought back to the states to use for the programs that they had identified in their initial program activity, which many of you guys know our office had worked with many folks on the call about identifying programs. So we are in a wait and see still. So there will be another big conference for the deployment folks happening next month in DC. We don't know exactly when NTIA will do this turnaround after the listening sessions and come back with some, kind of policy recommendations or a policy paper for us to review. But we are all anticipating, and there's certainly a lot of unity on that national stage to try to see how these funds can be used, and a lot of discussions about how to shift something that might be a community program, how to shift that into one of the more allowed expenses that may come out of the non-deployment funds. So, computer distribution, or we're not exactly sure what the themes are going to be that they're going to allow or not allow. So we're going to wait and see on that. But yeah, we're very hopeful that by the end, by early summer this year, we're going to have clarity on that whole big black box of money that we all have been talking about, and we'll know one way or the other what's happening. And the other thing I was going to share is just in terms of the site visits. I will say that I've been to the Net Inclusion event before, and this is they do a really extensive site visit kind of thing, similar to our Hoike, but way bigger. They have presentations at each of the sites. They rent a bus and they tour, so you're with each other throughout the day. We did a 4.5-hour tour in Chicago. It's pretty long. We did five stops on my tour. And one of the places which I just kind of had sparked for me is that one of the places was a social enterprise where they have clients coming out of incarceration. They go into the center and they learn about work programs. So they're using digital skills for resumes and training and certifications. And they also have a social enterprise on site where they make lip balm and products made out of bees. And they have hives on the roof. And so they're training their formerly incarcerated clients to do beekeeping and then to make products. And then they have a cafe and a store that they sell them out of, and other items and stuff too. So we saw a lot of interesting tools, a lot of discussion about how to fund programs outside of the national funding opportunities we've used in the past. So a lot of interest in kind of that type of stuff, social enterprise, getting workforce development programs, having a way for them to be earning money themselves, so they're not just reliant on other sources, on government funding. Lots of just random discussions about that. So a lot of takeaways, and I would really encourage folks, if you haven't, I put a link in for the digital inclusion, the NDIA website. There is a listserv on there. I find it to be very informative. There are people from across the country posting every day, from really random small things like, does anyone have this translated in Spanish, to, this, I'm thinking about changing our curriculum to this, or, a lot of really practical conversations happening on that listserv. I think a lot of people here would enjoy. Okay, thanks, Bert.
So, yeah, no, that's great. That's great, Amber. Really appreciate that. And I would assume that many of you are already on the NDIA mailing list. So, I just posted something that they sent out recently. It just happens that the second listening session is actually happening right now over the Broadband Hui. So, but you can kind of like check your NDIA mailing list, and they are writing about it. and also highlighting some of the things that seem to be, captured as a result of the listening sessions. And the things that I've been hearing is that a lot of people are saying that they should, revive the funds that were taken away as a result of the Digital Equity Act. But then the NTIA is also highlighting the fact that they're hearing a lot of people on the listening sessions talk about, how the federal government has found $21 billion and that should go back to the Treasury. And then some are talking about using it for, emergency preparedness, and then also using the funds for permitting. So there's a wide range of positions that are coming out of these listening sessions. So it's probably a good idea to, take a listen and, encourage any of you who want to chime in, to follow, these mailings and definitely, say your piece. Okay, so anyway, that's the update on net inclusion, and I didn't want to take away from Christina and her team's time to talk a little bit about the big announcement about the Rural Health Transformation Program. And I won't take anything away from Christina. You can take it away from here. Thanks, Christina.
No, thank you, Bert and Amber. Really great to get the updates about the digital inclusion, and so happy that, to hear 700, or did you say 700 people? It's fantastic to hear that the momentum's still going. I mean, if you just think a year ago, we weren't sure, like, what will these types of organizations result in, the direction that we were going when we were not sure how to even talk about these things. So I'm so happy to hear that. And I was double checking to make sure that I'm signed up to that another listserv to sign up to. But anyway, today, Bert did ask us to give some information on a huge initiative, the Rural Healthcare Transformation Program. So I'm going to have Cindy give you the general overview, and then we can have more specific discussions after she provides this.
Yes, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for having us today. I just wanted to share some information about the Rural Health Transformation Program. It is a national federal initiative that has been designed to support rural health transformation across the U.S. states. All U.S. states were invited to apply for funding to support programming serving rural communities. Hawaii applied and was selected through a competitive federal review process and is now coordinating implementation through the state. Hawaii was awarded $188,892,440. The application was ranked 4th nationally during the federal assessment process, reflecting the strength of the proposal and the state's readiness to advance this work. Given Hawaii's small population, geographic isolation, and multi-island service delivery, this ranking is especially significant for us and underscores the state's commitment to innovative, community-centered approaches to improving health access statewide. So here's what comes next. Under the governor's leadership, RHT funding is being implemented through multiple initiatives that Dr. Higa will talk about in a minute, each designed to address different needs across the state. Program details are still being finalized, and any additional information will be released publicly by the state as it becomes available.
Okay, thanks, Cindy. So to give a little bit of background that's not on the slides, right? Many of you have heard that this is a very big initiative. It's $50 billion with a B over 5 years. And that sounds like a lot, but I want to put it into some context. The big, beautiful bill that this was in, it also cut funding for rural areas about $150 billion. So I just wanted to say that this sounds like, a great opportunity for the rural areas, but we have to think about how is it offsetting the funding that is not going there. So when this program came out, it was difficult for those in the rural areas because it felt like Christmas, right? But it's like Christmas, but we don't know what our needs are going to be. Are we going to need food? Are we going to need, like the analogy of it. But in any case, we'll take the opportunity, right? And I wanted to say that it was a really fast turnaround, like 2.5 months for the states to put together these proposals, and $100 million of there's $200 million was what probably most of the states applied for. The first $100 million was kind of a given, and then the second $100 million was scored on a metric. And for Hawaii, we didn't expect to do as well because some of the metrics were things like how many people living in the rural area, what's your geographic landmass of your rural areas, right? So we didn't expect that we would score that high, but the governor's office did put together a strong strategy and team and approach. So a little bit more detail, I wanted to just explain that the Hawaii's proposal was split up into 6 initiatives. So I can go over that in kind of a broad detail. The first one is Pili'ola Telehealth Initiative, which I know the most because we are helping to lead that initiative, so University of Hawaii. I have to say that out of the 6 initiatives, it was the smallest in terms of funding, but still there's a lot of telehealth woven into all the different areas. And again, this is strictly for supporting rural areas, but perhaps some of it will, infrastructure that's built will be of benefit to other places. I also wanted to point out that 50 states were eligible for this, but not DC and not the US territories, and certainly not the Pacific Island Free Associated States. So that was something also different about this program. So back to the initiatives. One was the telehealth, right? The second one is also going to be led by the University of Hawaii School of Medicine, and that is specifically for workforce development for rural areas and healthcare. There is a small program for rural respite networks. So, this is kind of establishing a statewide rural respite facilities. So I think there are some very successful ones where people were discharged, instead of discharging them straight to, maybe their homes, if they don't have homes, this would give them a place to help get care enough for transitioning, and giving them more care instead of getting discharged right to the streets, for example. So actually that one was funded smaller than the telehealth. So, but the next one is called the Rural Value-Based Innovation and Ahead Readiness Fund. So this is a program that will help rural healthcare providers pilot and transition from fee-for-service to pay-for-performance. This has been a long discussion for healthcare. How do we change and transform healthcare where people are actually getting paid to keep people healthy, right? Instead of every single procedure is being charged, and the longer you stay in the hospital, the better it is for the healthcare system. It's really hard to shift from fee-for-service, paying for all those specific things that are provided for patients who are ill, to change to how do we keep them healthy and well, right? So that's a long time discussion that the system, you may hear, is broken right now, the healthcare system. So over decades, it's been trying to shift into this value-based care. So there's a section on that. And that also complements the AHEAD grant, which is a separate set of funding. Chrissy might know, but I forgot off the top of my head what the funding was for AHEAD, but I think it's a large amount as well for the transition. And SHPTA and Jack Lewin and Medicaid are leading that initiative. So that's a separate, that AHEAD grant is not funded out of the Rural Healthcare Transformation Program, but they did have a section that said if you have an AHEAD grant, then it would be beneficial to make sure that the initiative is tied to that. So there's a section on that. There's another section called the Rural Health Information Network, or RIN, that has to do with electronic health records deployments, again, in rural areas. And some of the information exchange things that, kind of initiatives that also have been long, like decades in the making, for exchanging quality health information, maybe service support information. social support services information, etc. And then the final one, I think that does